Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to See You at USC on Friday night. My name is Dan Toomey, and joining me tonight is Mr. Jack Epps. He is the chair for the Writing for Screen and Television Division at the USC School of Cinematic Arts. It's bound to be a great interview. You're not going to want to miss it. Email
yeah, exactly. Tweets. Get some tweets.
Thank you so much for sticking with us through the intro. Once again, my name is Dan Toomey, and Mr. Jack Epps, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to have you. So quite the biography, Mr. Epps. Not only are you the chair for the Writing for Screen and Television Division at the USC School of Cinematic Art, but you also are one of the co-founders of USC's comedy program. You're an author yourself, as well as a very experienced screenwriter in a little movie some people may have heard of called Top Gun, a family favorite amongst the Toomey household, I must admit. But I think, as we do with most of our guests, I think it would be better to start from the beginning. So you originally came to Hollywood seeking to be a director, correct?
That is correct.
Where did that interest first come from?
I was at Michigan State University,
Sure.
and I basically went to a student film festival as just a citizen, and watched the films and said, well, I can do better than that. So the next year I was in a class, put my film in the film festival,
Sure.
and here I am. I mean, literally, it changed my life. I found that that's really what I want to do.
Really?
Yeah.
And how long, when you came to Hollywood, did it take to realize, like, maybe directing is not for me and I have to take the screenwriting route?
Well, it wasn't that directing wasn't for me.
Sure.
Especially at that time, getting equipment was really expensive. You had to have 35 millimeter equipment. It's not like today where you have a phone, you can make a movie.
Yeah.
So it was like, I couldn't direct, but what I could do is I could write my movies that I wanted to direct. So I started working on writing and spending a lot of time on getting my writing skills up to eventually direct. But then what happened is, along the way, is my writing took off. I had a writing partner, Jim Cash, and suddenly we were earning money. Wow, doing writing.
Yeah.
So we said, well, let's do more of this. And next thing you know, the writing, I just really enjoyed it, and it became really the focus of my career.
And so you mentioned how you're saying I had to work on the process of making my writing better, in a sense.
Yes.
I know it's such a vague term, but what is that process like, or what was that process like for you?
It's a process of discovery.
Sure.
Writing is really hard. It's really hard. It never gets easier. And also, you're writing about a specific form, a screenplay. So that in itself, well, how does that work? Not only how does a screenplay work, but how does a movie work? How does that 2 hours work? What's the structure? What are the characters? What are the scenes? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things you have to understand. And how do you tell the story? And what are story? I mean, there's so many elements to try to figure out. And at that time, there were classes, but people didn't really, it wasn't really an option for me, and there weren't many books to go to. So it was really like reading scripts, spending a lot of time analyzing it and trying to figure out, how do these things work.
Okay.
And you learn more truly by reading bad scripts and good scripts.
Really?
Because a bad script, you get angry at it, go, this is terrible, this doesn't work. And with a good script, you go, wow, that's just amazing. How did they do that? You know what I mean? So,
Sure. Yeah,
and part of it is being very analytical, and I'm a very analytical person.
And I guess that's similar to what you mentioned with the film festival earlier. You saw something, you say, I could do better than that, and you had to. And so now you're at USC. How did you come here in the first place?
I had actually taught originally at UCL Extension in the 70s. I had sold a television show, and so I taught some classes,
Sure.
Which was really good because it helped me in terms of, they say to learn something, teach something. And so I had to teach others how screenplays work, so I taught myself so I could teach them.
Oh, okay.
And it forced me to develop a lot of theories that then I started putting into practice. And I stopped teaching. It was fun. And then through a sequence of events, the writing division needed an instructor for a thesis class. And so I said, well, I enjoyed doing it 20 years ago, whenever that was, and said, sure, I'll do a class. And so I did one.
Yeah.
And what was amazing, truly, and we hear this from all the instructors, is the quality of the student is so amazing. And I was so taken by their skill because I thought it was going to be like my previous experience where, okay, they're nice, they're having fun, it's a night class, and but I said, wow, these kids really, they know how to do it, they're enthusiastic, and so I got more deeply involved.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And so now you have a book here. We
Yes,
have
I do.
Screenwriting is Rewriting, the Art and Craft of Professional Revision. Now, a question I have just off the bat from the title, What makes professional revision an art and craft, would you say?
Well, the hardest thing to do is to take something you have created,
Sure.
all right, and then take it apart, deconstruct it, take it down to its pieces, and now reconstruct it again.
Yeah.
That's really hard. So screenwriting is both an art and a craft. Okay, there's a craft. It's like you're building a table. All right, so if I'm going to build a table, I can build a really nice table and the drawers and the things, and it works. Now, or I can build a table that's art. Because not only does it have the drawers, but it has an amazing finish. It has a shape to it. When you walk in, it has a glimmer to it. You know, so screenwriting's the same way. There's a craft of how you can write a good script, and then there's the art that is, wow, that story, the person, the emotions, this thing. It's something beyond just a movie.
Sure.
It's really this thing that affects people. So the concept is how to both be a craftsman and an artist, and also how to learn rewriting, which is not fun, not easy, but essential.
And so now, in a past interview, you've said that the majority of what you do, or you are where you are today because of rewriting rather than writing. So I guess, and I know that the distinction might be obvious to some, but what is that distinction, I suppose, between the rewriting and writing for a screenwriter?
Right. So all right, you have to start with the first draft of the script.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I did that, and I wrote many first drafts, and I got through them, and they were okay. And through my process of doing internships and reading scripts, I realized that there's a level here, a professional level. So I was writing at this level, but I had to get to that level. Now, I could write another 40 scripts, and they'd all have the same mistakes, or I could stay with an idea I liked and keep working it and rewriting it and getting notes and thinking about how can I get this better? How can I make the characters stronger? How can I get the story so it's more focused? How can I bring in relationships and obstacles? How can I create a better movie? And it's a process of many steps along the way to finally get your draft. It's like walking up this ladder until finally it's strong enough. And with my partner, we enjoyed rewriting. I had someone to work with, and so when we knew we had to do it, so we developed a process of how to rewrite, and would do multiple drafts to finally get it to the level that we felt we could take to town and get recognition.
So I describe, because you mentioned frequently working with your partner, and describe how, I mean, do you prefer working with a partner, would you say, as opposed to just by yourself?
I do like a partner. I like brainstorming with people. I'm very verbal, so having someone I can throw ideas at and discover things, I think makes things happen quicker. Creatively, I think you can jump to things as long as the person is a really good partner, a collaborator. Like you see things the same, you have the same instincts. So you're on the same wavelength, so to speak.
Yeah, you have to have the same mindset, sure.
Exactly, but also has a little something you don't have. So you're not covering the same territory. A good collaboration is you're both bringing something to the process, and together you make it much better than you are individually.
So in the rewriting process, I guess, so you finish your first draft.
Right.
What are the first steps, once you get it handed back by an editor or what have you,
Right.
what are the first steps that you take when you begin that rewriting process?
That's a really good question, and it absolutely is. The first thing is, and this is the truth, you've written a script, say,
Sure.
you don't know what you've written. You think you've written something,
Really?
but because you wrote it. So two things you have to do. One is you have to get notes. Well, first you have to get distance. You got to step away a little bit because you got to get some air between you and what you did. All right. But once you've done that, you've got to get notes from people who don't know the project, who are going to read it cold. And then what you have to do is also you have to read it yourself again, cold. And I'm a big proponent that you have to read it in one sitting, alone, without getting up for anything. You can't take a text, you can't tweet, you can't do anything.
Sure.
And you have to write notes on your script and have to go and create a draft that says here's where the problems are. And then truly rewriting ultimately is organization. You now have to organize those notes and put them, into categories and figure out, okay, here's the areas, because it's never one problem. It's a whole mess of problems. That's what's so complicated. And once you start to organize your rewrite, you're starting to put structure to how you're going to attack it, in a sense. And then you have to figure out and prioritize, what's the things I have to deal with first? What are the biggest issues?
Sure.
Issues of character, like who is this person, what I care about. Issues of what's the story, what is the emotional line that's going through this. So there are things that are most important to work with first, and then as you go down your list, the less important things. But what's important first to find out, what have you actually written, what did you want to write, and what do you have?
Yeah.
So you have to decide, do I want to do that, or is this closer to what I want now?
I mean, do you ever find yourself in coming to a revised script or writing a revised script that you're moving much farther away from what you initially wanted? I mean, how does that happen frequently for you?
It happens almost. It happens a lot in the business, because what will happen is somebody write a first draft, they get notes, then somebody writes another draft, and it's over here. They get notes, and somebody else and then it's over here. By the time you're done, the movie was about this, but now it's over here. So whenever I do rewrites professionally, I will always ask to see all the scripts, and because I want to see what happened to the project, because usually it gets lost along the way. And I'll say, you know what, this is great, let's pull these elements together, because I think the movie's over here and not over there.
So you see, that's interesting, because you see frequently you can take different parts of the writing process and say, this was the best part of this, but also this was the best part as well, and you put them together?
Right, there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of pulling pieces. Rewriting, it's a very weird thing. Odd drafts tend to be better than even drafts.
Sure.
First draft, it's got inspiration. It's something excited, there's something wonderful. Now you get notes, now you do the second draft, and people are telling you do this and do that, and you try it, and not everything works, and not everything is a good note. So then you step back and go, well, I don't think that works. In the third draft, you say, no, I don't like that. I shouldn't have taken this out. I'm going to pull this out. And now it tends to be a better draft. It's truer to your vision again, because you've tried things, let them go, and now you're back sort of on your path.
Yeah, I mean,
so there's an editorial process.
Sure. I mean, in that editorial process as a young writer, was that ever frustrating for you? I mean, did you ever come in with some preconceived notion of, this is my script and I'll send it in and then that's what it'll become? Or
I did a lot of internships and I read a lot of high-level scripts.
So
I realized that if I didn't get my script at that level, no one was going to pay attention. So my partner and I was doing at that time a lot of grip work. I was hanging lights, I was shooting some assistant camera work, I was loading cameras, to pay the bills, and my partner and I were writing on the side. So it took us actually over 2 years and about 7 drafts to get this first project to where we felt the town was going to pay attention to it. Because I knew, look, if I didn't do that, people go, gone.
Of course.
So what have I gained?
Yeah.
So you have to enter the town with your best game.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me, I would love to hear if you agree, but like, you really had to know the business before, the business as a whole, rather than just screenwriting.
Right. Well, that's why internships are valuable.
Exactly.
Because you get behind the scenes, you meet the people, you listen to the language, you start to get a sense of it, plus you network a little bit, and you understand what's at stake and what this is about. And it is a business. It's really a business.
Yeah.
It's about selling tickets. It's about corporations have to show profits.
Sure.
You got theaters that have to fill seats and pay their employees.
And did you find yourself more and more writing towards the business side of it?
No. It's interesting. When I was in college, I was very much like a lot of people at that time. I was doing, very art films and, symbolic things and stuff like that.
Sure.
And that was fine. It was fun.
Yeah.
And I got that out of my system. And then when I came to Los Angeles, I sort of realized that I was a big movie guy.
Sure.
That what I wasn't a small independent filmmaker, and I love those films. I really do. But part of it, I think, in anything creative is, who are you, and what do you do best, and what is it that you want to be doing? And I think it's not easy to tap into that. So, and I think I feel fortunate that I said, I really like these big movies. I like pop movies. I like them. I like entertaining people, and hopefully I can take them on a good ride, and they have fun, and explore some characters, but really entertain. I don't think there's anything wrong with writing entertainment.
No, there's not.
It's like
that.
But I think it's actually, I realized that instead of being Ingmar Bergman, I wanted to be Billy Wilder, which is
Yeah. And a very extensive career was made out of that. We have to go to a quick commercial break, but if you're free to stick around, I would love to talk more about your work at USC, if you wouldn't mind. All right, well, Mr. Jack Epps is here with us for CEO USC on Friday night. My name is Dan Toomey. Don't go anywhere. And thank you much for joining us once again, and welcome back to CEO USC on Friday night. My name is Dan Toomey, and joining us tonight is Mr. Jack Epps. Once again, thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And so in the first half of the episode, we talked a lot about the revision process. We mentioned your book as well as your other work in the beginning stages of your career. And now you're here at USC, and you have the ability to teach so many of the nation's best screenwriters or potential screenwriters. And what is something that you believe the screenwriting curriculum at USC offers that you wish you had when you were entering Hollywood as a young screenwriter?
Well, there's many things. It demystifies the process.
Sure.
And it we talk about it truly as we talked about earlier as a craft. It's like, how to build things out.
Yeah.
We're a character-based program, and it took me a long time to realize that art is about character. And all art's about character. I don't care what it is, because the most fascinating thing in the world are human beings and our personal lives, our relationships, our attempts to form relationships.
Absolutely.
How hard it is, all that we go through. Life is. It's hard.
It's
hard. It's a grind.
It's a good amount.
Yeah, if you're going to throw yourself into it, and that's what's really interesting. So, it took me a long time to learn that. It took some failures to say, oh, you know what? Movies are really about people. They're about lives in crisis. Sure. So things that I had basically took me a long time to learn, now we teach, and we're a character-based program. So the first thing we work with our writers is exploring character. And what is character? What does character mean? And how do you find it? And character is really about what's inside. And usually it's about masks, that we hide ourselves. Who are we really? Who do we want to project ourselves to be? And who are we really? What's happening inside of ourselves? What little pains are we like? I don't want to deal with this right now, but we have to, because the stories throw us into situations where we're forced to confront our problems, our faults, our failings, our denials. So those are things that took me 20 some odd years to figure out. You know what I mean, in a lot of scripts. So, but I think what's hard, or the skill is, how do I do it to a student so that they value it? Because I've learned that if you give students, especially in writing and creative classes, if you give them the golden rules too soon, they don't value it. It comes too easy.
That's interesting.
You have to you learn better through struggle than you do through, here are the 10 things you must know in life. Well, that's nice, but if you go. If you have to struggle to learn those, and we sort of a little bit, here's a gem, it's like, here's a Pokemon,
So that's funny. So you don't, that's interesting. So you don't really have the whole moral, you don't really give the whole moral of the story to them right out of the bat.
When I started, they used to do that. They had a.
That's funny.
Yeah, they had like an intensive weekend where they told them everything about screenwriting over a weekend, and it was like, this is this thing that you're supposed to go away to to the camp, and I cut that out instantly. I said that's a horrible idea. That just really doesn't work, because that's not how you learn. For one thing, you need to learn you need to build on things and build to a whole larger whole, and you can't grasp every little thing at once.
Was that one of the only revisions you made when you first joined the?
What
were some of the other? I mean, you seem to be very involved in the process of revising. What were some of the other changes?
Well, in terms of realizing that you have, especially undergraduate, that you have to bring things in slowly and build a skill set and make sure that we give students things they can accomplish. We want them to accomplish. So you start with scenes, you start with characters. You don't start with things too large, and you start to build how to tell stories and how to develop, good storytelling techniques, and how to be better writers. Just in itself, words to paper. Now, we're very fortunate at USC by having wonderful students who, the students who apply here are just amazing. And for them, it's also a bit of a shock, because they're usually the best writer in their undergraduate, in their high school, and then they come here with the other best writer in their high school, and it's like, whoa.
Like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
I
was really good, and now suddenly. And so that's an adjustment period for that sort of thing.
Sure.
And the other things we've done is bring in television way earlier, because we believe in television in huge ways. So now our students had television like in the junior year. Now they have it in the second semester of freshman year.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's a big jump.
So television's fun. It's great. It's a great writer's medium right now, and there's great stuff happening in TV. So,
and I mean, I guess for the difference between, because you've written for both television and film, or movies rather.
Right.
What's the biggest difference? I mean, from somebody who has no experience in screenwriting, what's the biggest difference when you're writing for a movie and writing for an episodic television show?
Well, let's talk about today's episodic TV, because episodic TV has changed over the years.
It's different from when you started.
Very different, because it used to be you do the same show over and over and over again, and that was because they'd syndicate the shows.
Oh yeah.
So they didn't want to have any.
The resolution would be at the end of every show.
Right.
Sure.
So now you have these wonderful branching narratives. It's Dickensian. It really is these wonderful things. So over a series of 8 to 10 episodes, you have an arc that happens with the characters. So movies is a very contained 2-hour situation where you have a beginning, middle, and end, and a resolution by the end. Okay, now you can have 50 sequels, but you will have that will be a closed story. Episodic television, you don't resolve the characters' problems or even the plot problem of the series until it's over, frankly. We didn't. Breaking Bad didn't end until season 6 or whenever it was, and so Walter White, we were with his journey, and we saw him go deeper and deeper, and his problems continued, and everybody else's, and his effect on people. So it's a much longer narrative.
And what do you think about that longer narrative?
I love it.
I mean, do you think it adds to the realm of television?
Absolutely, it's
Really?
great. Oh, I think that's what's exciting. Isn't that what you're excited about?
No, I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
I was just wondering from the perspective of somebody who was there from the beginning of the business.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, not the beginning of the business.
The
That's a long time ago.
Sorry, for
I'm 800 years old.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then I guess going back to the curriculum, we talked about this earlier before the episode,
right?
And before I just blatantly insulted you there.
But it was well done.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. How you also are one of the co-founders of the USC comedy program.
That's correct.
And not a lot of schools offer a comedy minor, but we do. And what was that decision like? Why did we decide to implement that?
There were, we had an additional faculty member, two actually, but one, Barnett Kellman, who's in the production division. He's an amazing director. I mean, just a remarkable TV director. Barnett was at one point the pilot go-to guy. He was a guy who did all the pilots, and also 2 Emmys for Murphy Brown, and did 75 episodes as a director. Amazing comedy guy, a genius. And David Isaacs in the writing division. David has been involved in over 800 episodes of episodic television, also an Emmy himself. Barnett came in, he said, we should do comedy, and so we teamed up with, Barnett, David, myself, and decided let's put together a comedy program so that we can take comedy seriously. People just have not been taking it seriously.
Yeah, no, and we think, and we also discussed about this earlier, it's a very tight-knit community. At USC for comedy. And describe the importance of that when you're trying to write for comedy, because we said it's more difficult than drama to write for comedy. So why do you need such a close-knit group of people?
Well, as they say, dying is easy, comedy's hard. And one of the hardest things to do is truly to make people laugh. It's really, I can make people cry really easy. In a scene, I can have somebody sobbing really fast. I get 2 questions in my career. Did I have to kill Goose, or did I have to kill Hooch? And yes, I did. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay, they had to go. But with comedy, it's a fine line. What makes people laugh, and how do you make them laugh? And what is, so much is timing, so much is technique, so much is what you set up to deliver a joke. And it's an art form, really, to be learning. And it's also an innate skill. It's Mel Brooks was here. I did a Q&A with Mel, and it was actually a lot of fun. Asked him 4 questions. 2 hours later, we were done.
Yeah,
it's Mel Brooks.
Exactly.
And so, Mel, can you teach comedy? And he said, no, either you got it or you ain't.
Sure.
So you can't, if somebody understands humor, they can be funny. They can get funnier, they can get their craft, but we can't take somebody who doesn't have a sense of humor and give them one. Maybe we can do it surgically, we'll try it someday, maybe genetic code, we can do genetic engineering, find the comedy code.
Yeah. And so something I'm very interested in hearing about, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but do you ever find, because so much of comedy can be improvised, I think some of the best comedic writers are improvisational, do you ever find yourself almost flowing from that same kind of improv mindset whenever you're writing?
Well, in one sense, all writing is improv. In a sense that what you're trying to do is keep a flow between you and the page. In a sense that you're trying to let this creative thing come out of you without getting in the way of it. The biggest problem with being creative is getting in the way of your own creativity. So there's a sense of that. But in terms of comedy, Saturday Night Live has no improv. Lorne Michaels will not allow improv.
Yeah.
And here's why, because improv I love improv. You learn a lot of comedy, because improv is about listening. That's what improv. You have to listen to what's happening, because you have to now take that and work it and find where the funny is and work with the improv, what the chain has been established, the story. But regular comedy, written comedy, is a very different, because you're writing to set up the humor, the jokes, to find out where the comedy is. Sketch comedy is very different too. And each one has a little different shape and form, because sketch is a little short story in a very short window. And then you have episodic television comedy, 3-camera live, Big Bang Theory, that's one form of comedy. Now we have a dramedy, that's a different comedy. And then we have feature-length comedies, Bridesmaids, things like that. So in comedy, and what's interesting about comedy too is it doesn't travel well. Time does not do well to comedy.
I would agree. Yeah.
Generations tend to have their comic tone and what comedy does. So what does travel is classic, like Chaplin is funny. Everyone laughs at Chaplin. They still will laugh at Chaplin. So there's a classic comedy that travels, but then there's a cultural comedy, and comedy has to be of the moment.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because you look at comedy of the 50s, the stand-up comics were good. But if you look at like comic shows or movies, you go like, that's not funny. I don't get it. Why were people laughing at it?
And not every comedic film from the 50s is going to translate to now.
Very few do. They do, like Billy Wilder, when it's a high-level comedy and it's about human. If comedy is based on human nature, what's happening, and you know, the comedy between people, that will last because those truths don't change. But if it's sort of silliness or something, you know, I think of like Jerry Lewis. Okay, Jerry Lewis, I'm not trying to knock Jerry Lewis, but he was hysterical in the 50s. I mean, people were like going all over the place. Well, now you look at it and say, it's not funny, I don't get it. Yeah. And I'm not trying to knock him, but times changed, and so that went out of style.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but Mr. Epps, thank you so much for joining us once again. For Mr. Jack Epps, once again, my name is Dan Toomey. This has been See You at USC on Friday night. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a good weekend.